So anyhow, I'm going to share my screen with you. So just a moment. Okay, so this is actually a presentation that was prepared by Dr. Kenneth Klimo, the professor and chair of our department. Since he wasn't able to do it, I'm presenting it for him. My name is William Terzaghi. I'll provide you with my contact information at the end of the session. And if at any time you have any questions, by all means, chime in and I'll do my best to answer them. So Dr. Klimo thinks that the thing that makes Wilkes special is that we're an excellent science-based curriculum, but in a liberal arts setting. And what that means is that we're looking at it not from just a standpoint of learning techniques and learning a lot of information, but learning to think about the information you're learning and learning to present it in sort of a coherent fashion. So we have students present learn traditional concepts in biology, but we also ask them to learn to think about it and how to apply the information they're learning. So Dr. Klimo puts it that we have dynamic instruction, that we believe in doing a lot of hands-on work. That's been a challenge in this year, but we're still open face-to-face. We've completed our first month, and we emphasize a lot of problem solving. So rather than just going out and having you memorize a bunch of facts about biology, we're asking you to apply that information. And the way we do this is by having you perform a lot of hands-on laboratory experiences. And that includes designing experiments in a laboratory setting. For example, I teach the introductory biology course, and many of our sessions, the final part will be to design your own experiment to study something about biology, some aspect of biology, using the techniques and what you've learned earlier during the experiment. So this week we were studying membranes, and students were given the choice of looking at what kinds of things might affect how well a membrane works, what kinds of things might prevent a membrane from doing its job properly. So because we talk about it being a science-based curriculum in a liberal arts setting, we emphasize the interconnectedness between the different parts of biology and between biology and other experimental sciences. So we talk a lot about the interrelationship between biology and chemistry, why you have to know chemistry to understand what's going on inside living organisms. Talk a lot about the interrelationships between biology and physics. And this isn't quite so obvious, but talk about the relationships between biology and English literature, and between philosophy, and of course the importance of math and understanding everything that's going on in any of the sciences. And math especially is becoming increasingly important between biology. And so this helps place the context of why what we're learning about biology is a benefit to all society, and how the rest of society helps impact what we're doing in biology. Classic example right now with what's going on with how we react to the COVID pandemic and the kind of treatments we do, how we go about dealing with the biology of the pandemic, and how we go about dealing with the social aspects and the way it affects society. So we have a wide variety of courses within biology at the upper level. And we've somewhat arbitrarily subdivided biology into 5 categories. So botanical sciences, structure function, which is basically anatomy and physiology, diversity and populational, which is ecology and other sort of studying groups of organisms, then cellular and molecular, and finally quantitative. That's a relatively new area, but we want to make sure that all students will have experienced a course on using the various techniques and the ways of handling big data. Big data is becoming such an important part of everything. For example, how are they going to analyze the results of testing the COVID vaccine on 30,000 people? And how do you make sense of all that? So another key feature of Wilkes, and something I believe we do better than most other local institutions, and that is we provide students with the opportunities to get involved in real research. And so we only have a very small master's level program, so virtually all our research is done with undergraduates. And that means that all of our faculty have genuinely dedicated to doing research with undergraduates. We want to get undergraduates involved in the process of science. It's an important part of learning about biology. And so rather than looking at teaching undergraduates as sort of a chore that you have to perform, we genuinely want to teach them, and Wilkes recognizes that. And so we actually get rewarded for our quality teaching and for the work we do with undergraduates. And therefore, we don't have, all of our courses are taught by PhD level faculty. And we have one person who has an MD, but again, she's the fully graduate degree. So here are the current biology faculty. So we have Dr. Azal Mekki, that she's actually sort of an adjunct, but she has an MD, and she's been involved in helping teaching some of the anatomy and physiology for nursing students, various other medical related courses. Dr. Bill Biggers is our invertebrate biologist. Ms. Debbie Chapman is she's involved in helping to teach the freshman level courses, and she teaches a variety of other courses, and especially courses for non-majors. Dr. Linda Gutierrez is also an MD, and she teaches upper level courses in various medically related fields, and she does research primarily on the role of a protein called thrombospondin in the development of various colorectal cancers. Dr. Gregory Harms is actually a biophysicist. Part of his research involves just making cutting edge microscopes, and another part of it involves using his microscopes to study mice that have been genetically modified to make them prone to developing Alzheimer's. And he's using them to try to develop, find ways that potentially detect Alzheimer's early enough to treat it properly, and ways to figure out what actually goes wrong during Alzheimer's. Dr. Lisa Cadlick is our geneticist. She works with Drosophila, and she works specifically in studying the roles of certain proteins in the transition during a key phase of Drosophila development. Dr. Valerie Coulter is a mammalian physiologist, and she teaches a lot of the courses in anatomy and physiology. And she teaches courses like endocrinology and mammalian physiology, mammalian structure and function. Dr. Ken Klimo is a plant ecologist. He's also the chair of our department, and his work involves, first off, revegetation of abandoned minefields and revegetation underneath gas lines. And we've been working together for a number of years on studying the production of the, it's a chemical called researc that's been shown to have a variety of health benefits. Dr. Michael Steele is our animal behavioral ecologist. He studies squirrels and how they make the decisions on whether to eat or cache acorns and the role this might have in acorn forest regeneration. Dr. Jeffrey Stratford is also an animal ecologist, but he studies birds. And one of the things he's been studying is the role of the suburbs and forest fragmentation and how that affects birds. And I'm a plant molecular physiologist. I do a lot of molecular work, and I've also done a certain amount of plant physiology. And like I told you, I've been studying the production of researc along with in collaboration with our Dr. Ken Klima. And we do manage to get a certain amount of fun. This is our, come on. This is our faculty that we got dressed up for Halloween last year. This is an example of some of the equipment we have that these are, it's interesting, Dr. Klima chose to do all these. This is a standard PCR machine. This is a, well, it's going to be more obsolete, but it's a technique for studying all the genes in an organism at once. It's called a microarray. This is the equipment we use to document our DNA gels. And this is a piece of, for quantitative RT-PCR. This is actually a type of instrument that's used for the rapid detection of COVID based on mRNA. In fact, we could do a COVID diagnostics, although I don't really want to be involved in handling the samples. Okay, so we have a variety of analytic equipment, and since virtual research is done by undergrads, undergrads are using it. For example, my students have used the quantitative RT-PCR machine quite extensively. We also do a fair amount of work out in the field. And again, we have several stream ecology. In this case, they're studying the ecology of a stream that specifically, well, it's been affected by mine runoff. And so research is an important part of our job, and it's an important part of the student experience. And so virtually any student who wants to get involved in research will be allowed to do so. And so they get involved in all aspects of it. Certainly, in my case, well, I'll start off helping them a lot, but then as they get more experience in the lab, it'll just be, well, what do you want to do next? And either that sounds pretty good, or, well, have you thought about maybe doing this instead? So, as you see, we have a wide variety of research topics that are going on. One of the things going on in my lab, we have a number of mutants of a plant called Arabidopsis, and the only thing wrong with them is they don't make a specific RNA molecule. This RNA is not for making proteins, and in one case, the mutants grow twice as tall as their siblings, and the only difference between them is they're not making one little RNA. So we're trying to figure out what that's doing. We also looked at isolating and quantifying resveratrol and Japanese knotweed. We've been experiencing look, we're trying to understand whether when you have a disease outbreak in a hospital, was it brought in from outside, or was it actually being propagated within the hospital? And so that's been an important area of research for one of our faculty. As I already told you, Dr. Gregory Harms is looking at the early diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And we can see we have a wide variety of additional research projects, varying from looking at the cellular molecular basis to field ecology. And so here's an example of a number of students who are involved in doing field research. And here's some work going on in the lab. Here's actually, last summer was a little bit special because obviously we couldn't do research on site. We did continue to do research remotely. So for example, I had 5 students working with me that we were communicating once a week. They were doing various literature search. And one of the other things that I personally do is bioinformatics. And very recently, the a complete DNA sequence, the genome of Japanese knotweed has been obtained. And so my students were actually sifting through that massive DNA looking for specific genes we were interested in studying once we were allowed back in the lab. But in most years, we have 40 or 50 students who are actually spending the summer doing research on campus. And this was a group shot a couple of years ago. It was actually towards the end of summer after some students had gone away on vacation. So there were actually probably about 15 students missing from this picture. And here's an example of studying some birds out in the field. And a very important part about doing research is letting other people know what you're doing. And so we all make a point of taking our research students to present their work at, well, local and national conferences. I personally usually start by taking my students to a local conference to get their feel for what it's all about. And then every summer, well, with the exception of this summer, I've taken the students working with me to present their work at the American Society of Plant Biologists meeting, which is an international meeting with people from all over the world and usually somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people. And so again, some other examples of students presenting their work at meetings. The very common way of presenting your research is in a poster, like we see here, where you summarize what you're doing in poster format, and then people come up and ask you to explain it all to them. And so get another group, this time presenting their ecology work. And one of the things about scientific meetings is that they're often held in attractive places. So for example, this particular meeting, 2017, the American Society of Plant Biology meeting was held in Honolulu. So the day we arrived a day early and rented a minivan and drove all the way around to Oahu. And then, well, they were fairly liberal time off. So especially a lot of the girls spent a lot of time on the beach at Waikiki. And we have a number of different field sites. We have, I think it's about, well, so upwards of 40 acres out in the hills above Wilkes-Barre. At the New Angola Bog, which is a wetland about 10 miles from the Wilkes campus, we have some field sites and just some examples of the sorts of vegetation you actually see. Dr. Stratford has several cameras, a trail cam set up at this site here, and he's catching all kinds of weird organisms, animals wandering around. There's one we're trying to figure out. We're pretty sure it's a fisher, but we're not positive. It sort of ambled across in front of the camera at 2 in the morning. And here's some examples of how we all work together, that we really want the students to succeed. And so we're trying to help people along rather than trying to weed them out. And an important part of that is getting students to work together in teams. And so even though a lot of our students are interested in the health sciences, they tend to work together rather than competing with each other. And that's a characteristic, I think, of pretty much all our groups. In fact, an important part of our curriculum is that we require all students to complete a senior project, and most of them do it as part of a team. So we'll have 2 or 3 or sometimes as many as 4 students working together. We also provide a number of opportunities for taking courses off campus and for conducting research off campus. Wilkes forms part of a group of undergraduate institutions who join together to run a marine science station at a place called Wallops Island, which is on the coast of Southern Virginia. And every summer, a number of different courses are offered. This varies according to which faculty are actually willing to offer the courses that summer. But sometimes there'll be intense, like 3-week experiences. And we've had things like one student spent a summer at Wallops Island studying dolphins. And we've had others who've been studying more mundane marine creatures or marine plants. We also have the opportunity for internships with various corporations, the local nonprofits, And a number of our students now have gone away and done what they call undergraduate research experience opportunities. These are usually at high-end research programs. I've had a couple of students working with me who spent the summer working at Brookhaven National Labs. Another went down to North Carolina State University. And these are always paid research experiences. Not a tremendous amount, but you'll get room and board cared for, and usually a stipend that's, I think it's roughly around $4,000 now for the RU programs. And in addition, we have a number of study abroad program opportunities. And so some of them are on an individual basis where you arrange to spend a semester abroad. I've had students go to Spain, to Australia, to England, to France. And others are shorter, more intense ones. For example, Dr. Stratford he's taking groups of students to Ecuador on a couple of occasions. So that was for a 3-week, it was a course that they got 3 credits for the course. Another group was taken to Belize in 2017, so they're studying organisms in the rainforest. Again, another intense 3-week course. And here's an example of the sorts of things that people do at Wallops Island. So here they're on a research vessel, and that's the sieve they use to collect organisms that are growing in the water. And another thing that we do a lot is performing various meaningful community projects. Some of this is through the courses. There's also 2 sort of biology related organizations. We have the Biology Club, and we had the Beta Biology Honor Society. And so in this case, they're going out and actually measuring all the plants that are growing back on a mine, on a site that's been deeply damaged by mining. This is an activity that we do in the spring, sometimes, most years. This is actually called the Relay for Heat, that we start at 6 o'clock in the morning and run back and forth until we've covered 100 miles, each person running a 4-mile leg. And the purpose is to raise money for the Martin Luther King Fuel Fund, which is a fund specifically for local families to help pay their fuel bills, sort of a last resort. The Biology Club also performs highway cleanup, and we do a variety of, sometimes elementary school students will come on campus. Sometimes we'll go to the elementary schools to provide various science exhibits. So here's an example of kids making DNA. So first we're throwing some spinach in a blender, and then we'll be extracting it. And we've abbreviated as TriBeta, but it's the Beta Biology Honor Society. And they also perform various community service events, in addition to doing various fun activities. Many of our students are interested in going on to medical school or other professional schools, such as dental school, optometry, and many others go on to PhD programs or master's programs elsewhere. And it's now quite possible for many to get jobs, meaningful jobs, with a bachelor's in biology. And for the last 20 years, we've done very well at placing students. That's for the ones who remain biology majors long enough to graduate. And so medical school, we've done very well. Optometry school, we've done very well. And to the best of my knowledge, every student who applied for graduate school somewhere got into it. Some of them have actually been able to obtain very prestigious graduate training fellowships. For example, we've had several who have obtained National Science Foundation a graduate research fellowship, which is a very, very extremely competitive program. And it will support you for 3 years of research in graduate school, pay your tuition, pay you a stipend, provide money for research supplies. And Wilkes graduates consistently comment favorably on how well they were prepared, especially when they're comparing how well they were prepared compared with other students in the program. Wilkes students have also done quite well at getting jobs. A number of students working with me have got jobs at quite good places. Sanofi Pasteur has a local facility, was about an hour away, that's involved in making a number of vaccines, and a number of us students have gotten jobs there. One of the recent graduates was quickly joined their gene therapy group at Waltham, Massachusetts. And one of the differences is that the reason they're successful is that they actually had the hands-on experience. So it wasn't that they could say, oh yeah, I know how to do PCR. They could actually go in and set it up and get it to work right off the bat. So to summarize then, why Wilkes for biology? First off, that we have a balanced curriculum. All of our graduates come out with a good fundamental background in biology, that they haven't specialized in ecology or they haven't specialized in cell and molecular biology. That's actually very important, even nowadays, that you want to have a good background before you specialize when you go to professional school or when you go to graduate school. And the faculty are genuinely dedicated to working with undergraduates, to teaching them, to doing research with them. And for a school our size, we have excellent facilities. And finally, you'll see it's a very supportive atmosphere, that we'll often see groups of students sitting and discussing, helping each other. They'll be working with faculty, hanging out with faculty. And so there's a lot of great opportunities to explore different things. For Wilkes in general, that there's a variety of clubs in addition. Yesterday, we had our club day, and there are 118 different organizations at Wilkes that people can join and do things with, everything ranging from things like biology club to things like running club to things like, see what is there? There's the anime group, the anime club, there's the Asian cultural club. So lots of different opportunities, both within the department and around the university. And finally, that we have a fine placement record. And here's graduation a couple of years ago. And the person who ordinarily would have been giving this talk is Dr. Ken Klimo. He's probably the point person for sort of more general information. My name was William Terzaghi, and I'm a professor of biology here at Wilkes. I'm also the co-director of our master's program in bioengineering. I'm involved with the synthetic biology track. And here's how to get in contact with me. I email, and my office phone is 570-408-4762. Okay, so that's all I had to say. So at this point, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.